What's going on, everybody? My name is Nate, and today we got the Nova up on the lift. Alright, so you guys have obviously seen the Nova before in plenty of videos, but this is the first time in over a year that I've been able to get it up on the lift, mainly because of my dad's other projects. But we got it up on the lift here, and today we are going to be doing some winter maintenance on it because it is December here in Toledo, and it is not very pretty outside. So this is the perfect time to get some stuff done. You can see I got some headers down here, but before we get into all this and what we're going to be doing, let's first of all take a look underneath this car, since the only time we've really seen it was on the ground laying on our back. So let's get a good look at the underside of this car, and then we'll get into what some of the projects are that we're going to be getting into. All right, so hopping underneath the Nova here, I am very pleased to say that there are no unpleasant surprises. The main thing that I did notice under here is we have a lot of leaks. God, it's static. So I have a lot of leaks going on. But we will be addressing most of these. You can see the underside of our small block here, nice chrome pan. I've already cleaned some of this up. And another thing that I have already done is swap out the stamped steel pan for this cast aluminum pan. The reason I did that is because the stamped steel pan that we had on here before was leaking like a sieve. And that's generally just the way that stamped steel pans work, is, you know, just they leak. Usually over time, the edges on here, they'll get warped because people over torque the bolts, and then, you know, your gasket can't seal in between there. So just bit the bullet, got a nice cast aluminum pan on here, got a new rubber gasket inside, and then obviously all new hardware around. There was a little bit of clutch material inside of the old pan. I see my dad took it and must have pitched it already, so I can't show you that, but there was a little bit of clutch material in there. Nothing I think that's concerning. But regardless, that is something that will need to be addressed at some point, more than likely with a 4-speed. We'll get to that in a little bit. You can see our torque converter and flex plate under here. We don't have the cover on for whatever reason. Got a mini starter under here. And this is another project that I'm going to address this winter, is we have every single power wire powering the entire car coming off of that starter lug. And that's because the battery is all the way in the trunk. So I actually got a little junction strip that we're going to put in here and rewire all this. You can see we got wires hanging out in here, so not good. We're going to clean all that up. You can see our stock disc brakes on the front. Somebody only painted the front side of them, no big deal. But suspension stuff all looks super good. Everything under here seems really nice and tight, nothing loose. And it's kind of what I expected, because this thing didn't really have any slop in the steering at all, or anything really concerning. Looking at the rest of the car, the floors all look really nice and solid. This is another project that I'm working on, is getting some of this stuff cleaned up. We'll get to that when we get into talking about the project we're working on. But back here you can see we've got our drive shaft loop, we've got our Panhard bar, lighter bar set up, and everything back here looks to be really good. And also my booger weld job on this ladder bar bracket is still holding up after a year, so we're gonna end up painting that as well. But looking at the rest of it, all of the narrowing job back here looks really good. Nothing out of the ordinary or concerning back here. This is the new center section we put in last winter. So this is our 355 posi. You will notice that we have a leak already on here, and it's from the one seal that I didn't replace, which is the, I believe this is technically called a pinion support. But basically underneath this, there's 5 bolts on here. There's an O-ring behind there, and that seems to be where we have the leak from. Naturally, the one thing I didn't replace. So back here, see our new wheelwood disc brakes set up back here. Coilovers. Got a new fuel pump in here. We ended up tossing in an Aeromotive fuel pump. The Holly Blue pump was making some really bad racket, so swap that out. But got our QA1 coilovers back here. Chunk pan, obviously no gas tank back here. And the only corrosion that I have seen on this car so far is there's a little kind of crusty area around here, and of course this was above the gas tank, so that makes sense why that'd be a little squishy. And then the subframe rail back here is very thin. There's a little hole up there, but if I wanted to, I could plate that. But again, back here there's really no I don't want to say there's no structural need for it. I mean, it's just holding up, you know, the bumper and whatnot back there, but nothing, you know, that's going to make the car undrivable. So other than that, the floors in this thing look really awesome. And obviously it does have new custom made floor pans up until, I'd say, about halfway point of the car. So yeah, underside of the car, pleasantly surprised. There are no bad surprises. So now that we kind of have an understanding of the layout under here, let's talk about some of the projects that we're going to be working on. The first thing, well, I guess first things first, obviously take care of the transmission leak. This transmission pan was leaking so bad that it leaked. It must have been coming out. I replaced not only the pan, but the rear pinion seal as well. That was obviously pouring out fluid. And you can tell because it splattered up here, down the floor, and then continued to leak out on the floor on the outside of the frame rail. So that was really bad. That's now taken care of. But that's all cleaned up. Following that was to do some major cleanup under here, because obviously there was a lot of transmission fluid, there's a lot of oil, a lot of gear fluid, or gear lube. So there's just gunk everywhere under here, and that is where this whole mess comes into play. Now, you will notice that this is undercoated. This is all the new floor back here. But this does have some kind of an undercoating on it, and unfortunately, by using brake clean or pre-cleano or any sort of cleaning agent, it turns it into goo, which is really unfortunate because I now have no way to clean the entire underside of this car. So that leads to this. Everything up above this transmission tunnel here was just caked with junk. I mean, like 1/2 inch thick of just sludge. So that I ended up just scraping all off. As you can see, it took it down to the bare metal. This is right where we come into the original section of the floor. So this is all original sheet metal up here, but basically scraped all this undercoating off, got all the junk out. I tried to get as far up behind the transmission as I can. And then with that, we're gonna clean all that, prime it, and then paint it. We're gonna try and match. I'm not gonna go with the undercoating, but we are just gonna go with like a semi-gloss black. And then while we're under here, we're gonna redo stuff like the drive shaft loop, our transmission cross member, frame rail, obviously this stuff back here that we had to weld, and any other little stuff that we can clean up while we're down here. Just not high priority stuff, but stuff that needs to get taken care of. Now, another big project that I had that I was waiting for winter was pulling the headers off. Now, the reason I initially pulled these headers off was, well, they look like crap. Valve cover gasket leaks just caused a huge mess on these things. And then also you can see down here closer to collectors, they're starting to pit and rust. So these need to get cleaned up. And I was originally going to send these out and get ceramic coated, but after, you know, kind of gauging the price of that versus I could just get a brand new set of headers, but at some point I might want to put a big block in it, I just decided I'm just going to blast these here, repaint them, and then just, you know, they'll at least look better. But, you know, if at some point down the road I end up putting a big block in this thing, these are going to be pointless anyway, so I'm not going to spend close to $1,000 ceramic coating them when I won't need them. But the other reason I pulled these off was this right here. We had a massive header leak. This is on the passenger side, so number 6. And I heard this originally when I first got the car. I couldn't tell if it was like a lifter tick. This is a solid roller cam. So I didn't know if it was a lifter tick or if we had a header gasket leak, and obviously header gasket was the culprit. So glad we pulled these off anyway. They had to come off and get new gaskets. Another project that I'm gonna have is, along with cleaning the rest of the floor of it, we're gonna be doing some major cleanup at the front end of this car as well. You can see we've got oil all down the side of this block, and that's mainly from the valve cover gaskets up there. So we're gonna toss some new valve cover gaskets on it. Might as well do an oil change while we're down here. I have no idea when that was last done. And aside from that, I think that's mainly everything up here. Oh, we do have one more slight problem. So as I told you guys, this was a drag car in, I believe, somewhere around the 90s. So it was raced, it was more than likely abused. You know, it's a rough life for a drag car, and especially for a unibody car. So this now has subframe connectors on. As you can see, originally your subframe would have ended right here, and then they welded on these bars that connected to the rear frame section of the car. Now, I don't know when those were put in, but if we come over here to the driver's side subframe, you can see we got some twisting going on. We have a fairly large gap here, and it looks like someone has already tried to repair it. They tried welding it, and it's popped loose again. So the passenger side is, I'd say, a normal size gap. This is just, you know, I mean, there is supposed to be a seam here, obviously, but this is cracked open pretty wide. So we are going to have to figure out how to adjust this, or address this, also adjust it. But we're gonna have to see if we can either somehow pound this back into place, you know, bring it down to the floor, use a floor jack to try and press this back up, and then re-weld this whole thing is my plan. Again, this is nothing that's really concerning. It's not really compromising the structural integrity of the car, but it's not good regardless, so we're gonna go ahead and take care of that. And the rest of this up here, I think we're pretty good. We got the drive shaft out. I got that in the back of the shop. We're spraying that right now. And then another project that I do have that's not going to be this winter, at least I don't think so, but I am seriously considering putting a 4-speed in this thing. Now, originally I was talking about putting a 5-speed Tremec in this car, and that's mainly because, you know, they're brand new. You have overdrive and whatnot. But after kind of looking into it a little bit more, what would have originally come in this car, which is a 4-speed Muncie, is almost half the price. It's arguably stronger than a 5-speed Tremec. Tremec usually only goes up to about 600 horsepower. A Muncie can handle, you know, I mean, they handled the big blocks back in the, you know, in the 60s and 70s. So those things can handle a lot of torque. And especially if I do plan on putting a big block in this thing, 600 horse, that's going to be cutting it kind of close for a Tremec. So looking into gathering parts to convert this over to a 4-speed, and luckily it should be very easy because this was originally a 4-speed. Here's our hole for the floor for our shifter. So I already have gotten in contact with a buddy of mine that has some Muncies, trying to get a hold of that. And then pretty much just clutch, bell housing, all of the pedal linkage itself is still in the car. So then we would just need stuff like our bell crank down here, which just bolts on to these 3 bolts here, and then onto the new bell housing. So honestly, it should be a very simple process for this car, mainly because it was originally a 4-speed, but also because all the linkage just bolts right on. We don't have to worry about welding anything on here, or, you know, adapting to something like a 5-speed Tremec to kind of custom fit it in here. It should just literally be bolt and play. So looking into that, and also a shortened drive shaft, or lengthened depending on length of the transmission case. But that's definitely something coming down the road. Aside from that, I think that's mainly our large projects under the car. Having the exhaust off, I was looking into seeing how we could possibly reroute some of this out to the back. And the main reason I haven't done that, one being it's going to be nearly impossible to get a 3-inch exhaust out to the back of this car, but also my tube bender, or pipe bender, only goes up to 2.5 inch, and this is 3. So I'd have to cut and splice a bunch of pipe into here, just pre-bent stuff like a you-do-it-yourself kit. And I really didn't want this to look cheesy under here, but basically right now I have it ending right about here. So we'd have to somehow figure out how to bring it down under this cross member back here, and then up and over the axle, and that's where it gets really tough because we have our coilovers right there. So we'd almost have to bring it up over here somewhere, and then getting it back here, it's going to be a nightmare. So that's another project for down the road, but that is the current status update on the Nova. So now that we've gone over pretty much everything we're going to work on the Nova this winter, let's take this extra time in this video to take a look at another car that's in our collection. And this one has been up on this lift for the past year now, I think, year and a half. It's been up on the lift for a while, and that's because we had a major project on this thing. So let me turn the camera around, we'll pull the cover off of this thing and show you what we got. This is a 1965 Plymouth Belvedere. And this car is cool for a lot of reasons. The main reason is because it's built to be a super stock clone or tribute. I'd call it more of a tribute than a clone because it is narrowed in the rear a little bit. But this is a really cool car. We got it about, like I said, I want to say around a year and a half ago. And well, let's go ahead and show you what we're working with before I tell you why I was up on the lift for a year and a half. So looking at the exterior of it, it's very period correct appearing. We've obviously got the super stock hood scoop on it, you know, stock bumpers. We do have American torque thrusts on here. I guess those are also period correct, but not correct for a super stock car, at least not back here. You can tell we've got, I don't know what size tires these are. These are 315s, 60 R15s, and we've got a little bit of room back here if we wanted to go wider. So like I said, it has been narrowed, but really nice paint on this car. There are a couple areas where, you know, I mean, it's okay, but this is definitely very old paint. And the reason that we're okay with the paint is because this was used as a race car from, I think, the 80s up until very recently. We got the car at an auction, but previously the car was owned by a gentleman out in Canada, and he raced this out there, and he called it the Broadway Hemi. It was all written down the side. I'll try and put a picture of it here in this video, but there's a lot of really cool history on the car. We actually found a magazine from Canada that the car was previewed in, and we'll get into the story of that a little bit later, maybe in another video, because there's a lot to talk about in that. But yeah, this was a race car for quite a long time, and basically we haven't really converted it back into a street car. It's mainly the way it was raced. Very similar to the Nova, except this was a much more streetable vehicle to begin with. But the interior on it is just beautiful. We have done some stuff in here. We just got done putting new door panels on it, new carpet, 4-speed. It wasn't automatic, and we'll get into that in a minute. We got to button up the steering wheel a little bit more. Yeah, we did some good cleaning up in here. You can see we've got the A100 van seats in it. Those would be correct for a super stock car. And as you can see, the guy that raced it put a lot of nice vintage Lions drag strip stickers and stuff like that on here. But the part that you've all been waiting for, under the hood, let's take a look at this beast that's under this hood, because that's probably one of the coolest parts about this whole car. So we can immediately tell that we got the 426 hood badge on here, and that is partially correct. But this 426 Hemi has actually been stroked out to 471, and what's even cooler about this particular engine is, I'll try and get zoomed in here and get the light on it. Maybe if I get my flashlight, it's a little better. Try and get it. There we go. You can see it has a triangle, an H, 426-HC. And the 426 is obviously a 426 Hemi. HC is for high compression, and this is a true 426 race Hemi. Now, the race Hemi was introduced in 1964, I believe, and the street Hemi didn't come out until 65 or 66. Might have been 65. But regardless, the street Hemi and race Hemi are completely different animals. The race Hemi had a way higher compression ratio. They had a lot of different stuff based on the internals, way bigger cam, and this is a true 426 race Hemi. We had this entire engine out of the car along with the transmission. We ended up redoing some stuff up here, mainly just clean up. So we did repaint the block in the correct race Hemi orange. If you guys don't have any street Hemi stuff up here, actually I do. The race Hemi is a slightly different color than the street Hemi. It's going to be hard to see it from far away, but this is street Hemi orange, which is actually a darker orange than race Hemi orange. This is a lighter orange. So that paint color is very hard to find. There's not a lot of people out there that actually make it. That's mainly because this is such a rare engine. But basically we had this engine out along when we had the transmission out. We repainted that, pull off the period correct cross ram intake. This is not a magnesium one, this is aluminum. The 65 would have been magnesium, but up on top we also have some not very period correct, but they are the correct size Holley carburetors, also vacuum secondary, which would have been correct for a super stock car. And we do have to flip these around. If you are an expert on this stuff, you'll notice that we currently have it set up with the throttle linkage on the actual butterfly linkage on the carburetor, which is incorrect. These carburetors were flipped 180 degrees, and on this little stub here there was a bracket that had your throttle linkage on it, and we were able to track some of these down. There's one guy out there that makes them still, so we did get those. And the reason we're going to flip them around is this whole mess here. You can tell our fuel lines are jacked, and that's because once these are flipped, this steel line here will go right into here, and vice versa, everything will line up. So underneath the hood of this thing is really, really clean. Stock high flow radiator in it, manual steering, manual brakes, very, very plain Jane car. This also is a heater delete, which we'll see as we get in the interior of it. You can see the hood is cut out for the super stock hood. And then obviously we did other stuff down here, like, you know, replace the alternator, new water pump. The distributor is also a cool thing. This is a vintage correct Mopar distributor, and you can see that because this right here actually unthreads, and that's where you would put a mechanical tack on the car. I can't really see the tag on here, but you'll have to take my word for it back there. This is a vintage Chrysler distributor. Hopping to the inside of this car, this is where also a lot of changes have happened. Like I said, new door panels, hardware, new armrests, carpet with the addition of a 4-speed. And we'll hop in here and take a look at what we've got. Like I said, this was originally a column shift automatic car, and I guess I'll tell you the whole story of it now. When we first got the car, we initially took it out for a test drive, and this is no fault of the owner, by the way. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea here. The car, excuse me, the car ran great when we test drove it there. Super nice guy. But once we got it back here, the transmission, which is a 720 or was a 727, sprouted a leak out of the pump seal and pretty much drained the entire transmission onto the floor. And once again, I say that's not the previous owner's fault, because we have had 3 727s in this shop do the exact same thing as that. So that's just, I feel like it's, you know, just the way it is with 727s anymore. You guys are probably gonna tell me I'm a complete idiot because I've never had a 727 do that, but I'm just telling you, we've had 3 within the past year do that right in this very spot in the shop. So we did end up then putting it up on the lift, pulling the engine out to clean that up, and then swapping in this 4-speed. This is an A881 4-speed Hemi transmission. Got everything for it from Brewer's Transmissions, which I can't say enough good things about them. They're awesome guys. They've got everything you need, and they will tell you anything that would help you out. So really good guys over there if you guys are looking for any 4-speed stuff for your Mopar. They sell the clutch linkage setup, clutch pedal assembly, shifters, bell housings, cross members, whatever you need. But anyway, rant over. So dash on this thing is pretty much the same. We did send out, so this is now a heater delete car. There's no heater box in the car when it was raised, but they did still have the heater controls on here, and this is what would be on a heater delete car, is just an off and a cool switch, and that literally does nothing. Since there's no heater box in the car, basically before you'd have a lever here for your temperature control, and then a bunch of buttons for heat, defrost, cool, etc. So this is the correct heater delete plate that we put on there. You can see the radio delete here. Really nice headliner in it. This is the tack that it was raced with. We do have a new tack for it, which is much more aesthetically pleasing in this situation here, and I'll try and get over and show you that in a little bit, but that's really cool. New column as well, because like I said, this was a column shift automatic. So this is actually I believe it's a Flaming River steering column. And we had to do some modification to get the stock wheel on here, but we do have that. We just got to hook up the horn button. I'm not sure why that's not on there yet, but pedal assembly is all in, clutch works, and this thing shifts like butter. Really nice, smooth. Also put some gauges down here for our oil pressure, battery, water temp, and whatnot. But this thing is just really cool, and definitely very cool having a race Hemi in it. Now looking around to the back of the car, like I said, this is narrowed, and this is a 8 3/4 rear end. The Dana 60 would not be offered with the Hemi cars until I believe 66. I want to say 66. It could be 67. I know for a fact 67 had the Dana 60 with a 4-speed Hemi. But until then, you got the 8 3/4. Here you can see our narrowed setup. We have the springs moved inboard, and then the frame rails have been shifted over as well. Nice aluminum drive shaft under here. There you can see our new to us Hemi 4-speed. Running open headers right now because this had a 2.5-inch exhaust on it. Might have even been 2 1/4. It was very small. So we're going to be redoing that in 3-inch, but we need to take it to a shop to get that done. And you can just see the floors on this car are just immaculate. I mean, this has got to be one of the cleanest 65 Belvederes I've ever seen in my life. But super clean underside. Really not a whole lot else to take a look at here. Inside the trunk, we do have our batteries back here. Jeez, oh Pete's, that is one strong spring. In the trunk here, we've got this battery. I don't know what the deal is with this huge battery. This is a strong box. It's a John Deere battery. But being correct for a super stock car, we obviously have our vent tubes that go out through the floor. Got an original spare back there, which is actually really cool. And it does have a sticker on there for Towel City Retreading. So not sure if that's a real deal, original sticker or not, but as you can see, it has a lot of other vintage stickers under here. Got the original jack instructions up under there. But yeah, just a really, really super clean, cool car. I would fire it up for you guys, but you saw the fuel lines on it, and because of that, we're not getting any fuel flow to one carburetor, so can't start that until we flip the carbs around. But overall, really, really cool car. And I guess I can add it into this video as well. It's kind of stinky because the other one's all torn apart right now. But if you guys are interested in the backstory of the guy who raced this car and all that cool stuff, I'll add a clip in here towards the end of this video. So if you guys are interested, stick around for that. If not, no hard feelings. But if you do stick around, you will get to see another cool car in our collection that also shares the same story as this car. So if you guys are interested in that, stick around, we'll show you that. If not, talk to you guys later. All right, so you guys decided to stick around. So like I said, this car was raced by a gentleman out in Canada in the 80s into the 90s. And he was a huge racer, and his wife, who at the time was his crew chief, was also big into racing. She didn't have a race car or anything, but she loved being the crew chief and all that stuff. And there's a whole write-up. I'll try and post the picture or something of the magazine article that showed it. But at the time, the guy bought his wife built a matching 1965 Belvedere station wagon for her. And I'll put definitely in the picture of these two cars next to each other into this video. And he built the station wagon to be an identical clone of this 1965 Belvedere, which was his race car, so that she could also have something to race. And if you look at the pictures of this car, you'll notice it is identical down to the T. The wheels are the exact same. The station wagon was also narrowed with the same back tires as on the race Belvedere. Interior was the exact same, paint color was the exact same, the cars were absolutely identical. Unfortunately, when this gentleman passed away, the wife had to sell the cars and they went their separate ways. And probably 10 or 15 years down the road, we ended up finding the Belvedere race car, which was the Broadway Hemi, and we ended up getting that. And we got the magazine article that showed the station wagon with it. We always said, man, that would be so cool to find that car, because they were actually called sisters, the two cars. And it was like, man, that would be so cool to reunite them, but you know, God only knows where the station wagon is at this point. And I was at work. This was probably about 3 or 4 months after we had purchased the Broadway Hemi, and I was sitting at lunch at work, and I just opened up Facebook Marketplace, and the first post that came up on my feed was a blue 1965 Belvedere station wagon. And at first glance, it looked identical to ours. And as I started looking into it, I noticed it had the same torque thrust wheels. It was narrowed in the rear, and it had a big block stroker 440 in it. And I said, that's the same car. And unbelievably, I got in contact with the guy, and it was the same car. So ended up talking to the guy, and of course I told my dad about it. And we weren't looking for another car, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So we ended up getting the station wagon as well. All right, so this one is also kind of an unfortunate scenario, and we'll get into all that as well. But as you can see, at first glance, the cars are identical. We have the same American Racing torque thrust on it, the same blue paint with the black side trim, black interior. On the hood, we did just have a super stock hood scoop put on it. That was the only thing that was different about the two cars, believe it or not. And also, looking at the hood emblem on this, it says 493, and that is because this is a 440 big block Mopar that's been stroked out to 493 cubic inches, and unfortunately it's all torn apart right now. And if you look, you may notice why. I'll get into that towards the end of this video, but as you can see, the block on this car is painted magenta, fuchsia, bright pink, whatever you want to call it. And that was because it was the wife's car. So really, really cool that all this has remained the same under here. But yeah, this is exactly how it was when she had the car. Looking down the side, we've got our skinny American torque thrust out front. This really sucks because we're in between two cars here, but you can see these are really cool in a station wagon as well, with the wraparound back window. Here are the narrow torque thrusts in the rears. Got your cool kind of semi wraparound rear window. And like I said, this really sucks because we've got the car parked in here and I can't move it obviously, but it does have the roll down back window. Just a really, really cool looking car as well. And I personally like station wagons. I think they're cool. My dad's never been a station wagon guy, but a Pro Street station wagon, it's kind of a different story. On the inside of this car, it is only technically a 6-seater, so it's not a 9. It doesn't have the rear bench facing backwards. But if we can get in here and take a look, you can see this is identical to how the race Hemi looked over there, aside from this is a bench seat. If we hop in, see if I can get my light on in here. You can see we've got the same tack, obviously same steering wheel, column automatic. That one also had a line lock on the column shift. This is the heater controls that I was telling you about that we took out and replaced with the heater delete, radio delete as well. Same dash setup, same obviously black interior. You can get a better look at the back of the car. This thing is just so freaking cool. Not only being a Pro Street station wagon, but being an identical match to the Broadway Hemi over there. It's just such a cool thing. But yeah, inside the car is pretty much the exact same. We've got our MSD box up under there, which I didn't show you in the previous one. But yeah, this is kind of the brief overview of the Wagon, as it was called via the license plate. The Broadway Hemi was called the Way Cool with the license plate, and this one, if you look back at the picture that I posted, it says Way Gone. So pretty cool there. Under the car, like I said, it's an automatic, so it's a 727. And I just want you guys to look at the size of this exhaust. This is a 4-inch exhaust system. And if you don't believe me, that's 4 inches. From headers, X-pipe, through the mufflers, and even over the rear axle, it is 4-inch exhaust all the way out. I have no idea why. Why you would have run a 4-inch exhaust on a naturally aspirated 440 beats me. It sounds really cool, and it definitely looks really cool, but man, I would not have wanted to been the guy that had to route that 4-inch exhaust over that axle. Couldn't pay me enough to do that. Now, that brings us back up to the front of the car, and these are the other parts that we're laying around here. You can see we've got a dual quad setup, and these, I believe, are actually old school Carters on here. These are not Edelbrocks. But dual quad setup, and I guess there's really nothing much else to do except talk about what happened up here. Now, the story is that we brought the car in for some paint work, obviously to have the hood scoop put on. I think we had like this fender repainted because it was very similar to the Broadway Hemi where it had those splotches of kind of touched up paint. So we had some stuff repainted up here. I think this had a big scratch on the fender. But anyway, brought it to a shop. Now, I'm not going to say the name of the shop. We've known this guy since my dad was a kid. He's a very good stand-up guy. And we brought it there to get some paint work done. They called us that the car was ready, and they said, well, we've got one problem. We started the car, and it showed 0 oil pressure on both gauges, the mechanical gauge and also the dummy light on the dash. So we brought our trailer down, towed it home, and the very first thing that we did was pull the distributor out and ran a drill with, we don't have the priming tool over here, but essentially it's a long shaft that connects down to your oil pump, which is right here, and you can manually spin your oil pump and see if you have oil pressure. We did that, we had no oil pressure. So the first thing we did was pull the filter off. Filter looked fine. We replaced the oil pump, even though the original one spec'd out fine via the measurements. We replaced it anyway. Pulled off the oil pan, made sure the pickup tube wasn't clogged, cracked, anything like that. That was all fine, but we replaced it while we were in there. Put everything back together, still no oil pressure. So that led us to our next thing, which was on the front of these 440s. There's one plug here, and there's another one that's kind of facing upwards underneath here. And originally these are just stamped in steel plugs. And what will sometimes happen is that these will pop out or fall out over time, and that will create a massive bleed that will cause no oil pressure. So we then pulled the timing chain cover off, and it turns out somebody has already drilled and tapped these to put plugs in to prevent that issue from happening. So at this point, we're pretty much lost. We have no idea what could possibly be causing this thing to have no oil pressure. Also, there was no metal in the oil at all. There was no metallic, no grit, nothing. So my next thing was, let's pull the valve covers off and we'll see if we have oil up to that point. We also had to pull the intake off because we're going to get that powder coated, the same silver that's on the Broadway Hemi. But once we pulled the intake off, you can see we have some carnage. We have 2 push rods that are out. One looks like a pretzel, and we have a lifter laying in the valley. So that right there is our cause of why we had no oil pressure. And additionally, we just put new oil in it, and we always use pen grade oil, which is green. You can see that we have green oil up to this point, telling us that the oil pump and everything was working fine. It was just bleeding out right there. Now, along with that, if it couldn't get worse, which hopefully this is as worse as it gets, or as bad as it gets, there's a cracked rocker. That rocker right there is cracked right in half. And I've heard things that these stamped steel rockers aren't very good if you have, you know, a high lift cam or something like that. I don't know the specs of the cam that are in this engine, but I know it's bigger than stock. But we have no idea really what happened here. The story was that, you know, the paint shop just started the car up, it had no oil pressure, no noises, they shut it off. I have a feeling that somebody might have started it with their foot to the floor and revved it to the moon, floated some valves, and lifter came out. I'm really hoping that valves didn't touch pistons. We'll find that out tomorrow when we come down here and do a compression test. But hopefully this is as bad as it gets, and we just need to replace some push rods and a rocker arm. We will be going with the cast iron direct connection style rocker arms when we put this back together, but we're hoping that's all that it is. And also, I didn't look at the MSD box, but the shift light has a 5400 pill in the shift light right in there. So I'm not sure what the actual MSD box rev limiter is set at, but obviously it was too much. So hopefully we don't have any internal damage to the engine, but like I said, we will find that out tomorrow. Also, while we have this apart, my joke was that, like sisters usually are, this one got jealous that one was getting attention, so it said, well, joke's on you. Now I'm going to look exactly like that one did. So, but while we have this apart, like I said, we're sending the intake out to get powder coated. The headers on this also look really crappy. These were ceramic coated, and you can see they're kind of pitting through a little bit, so not sure if we're going to pull these off and get those cleaned up. But basically we're just going to do cleanup on this thing. We have a new billet timing chain cover. This was previously just a stamped steel one. Timing set in here obviously looks really good, nothing concerning there. Internally in the engine, aside from the lifter laying in the valley. But hopefully we can do some cleanup work while we're in here and get this thing back on the road so that next year we can have the two sisters reunited and back on the road together. Well, anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing the story of these two sisters. Like I said, we didn't anticipate on buying two cars that quickly, but I think anybody out there in their right mind that would have purchased that car. And also, this thing was listed for a heck of a deal. So everything, all the stars aligned, and it was one of those things that we just couldn't pass up. So that is the reason we now have a 65 race Hemi Belvedere and a 65 Belvedere station wagon that look identical. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, see any other cars under some covers here that you want to take a look at, let me know. I will definitely try and get some videos out on them. I think while I'm down here, I'm going to get a video of this one behind me, and that's probably going to be it for me. I'm not going to be able to be down here that much longer today, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys stay safe out there. Leave a like, subscribe if you want to see some more, and happy holidays. Thanks, guys.